Hello everyone and welcome back to another manga review. First of all, if you are new here, I post a new book review almost every single day. So if you're looking for some reading inspiration or some book reviews to get you through the hot summer months, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, then maybe stick around. All right, let's talk about today's entry in the series of Kaguya-sama Love is War, and that is volume 11. So I have been reading and loving this series. This was a series that was recommended to me by a viewer and I picked up and I have been really enjoying it. The premise of the series is we have two students, Shinomiya and Shirogane. I hope I'm saying those names correctly. I know I have mispronounced them in the past, who both have feelings for one another. Shirogane is the student council president and Shinomiya is the student council vice president, and they have feelings for one another, but both of them have a lot of pride and a lot of stubbornness, and neither one wants to be the one who makes the first move. Both want the other to be the first one to confess. So they're both in this passive state of wanting to be confessed to, except they're not being very passive about it because these also happen to be highly intelligent students at a very exclusive academy. So both students are putting the other in situations that might force the other to show their hand. They're kind of creating these scenarios in which the other person might be forced to confess. This is a very elaborate game that has been going on for 10 volumes. Something that I think gets lost if you have not read this series is, and I say this because I experienced this recently, when you explain that premise to someone, the reaction that I've received from people who have not read the series is that really enough content to keep a story going? And that was a fear that I had going into this series. I felt like when I read the synopsis on the back, there wasn't going to be enough content to keep the story interesting or going. It felt like a two-page premise, and then where was the story going to go from here? But the author has managed to keep it really interesting and really funny throughout the entire series. They brought in additional characters who have been great additions. They've had some plot developments, and I really like the direction that the series is going. I think that from an outside perspective, before you read it, it sounds like there's not enough content, but I promise you, if you've been reading this series or if you haven't been reading this series, just take my word for it, there is enough content and enough content, I'm going to say it again, to get you through this series. Now, we are on volume 11 though, and I'm guessing, I'm not sure because I have not read this series to completion, that we are approaching a point where there's going to be a little bit of a tonal shift. So up to this point, our two characters have been going through high school in this exclusive academy. They have been trying to get the other person to confess. Neither one has been successful, but we've put ourselves in a lot of hilarious situations in the meantime. But we are now closing in on our third year. We're going to be entering third year, and this is the last year of high school for them, and they're going to have to start thinking about what comes next. So volume 11 is primarily filled with the usual shenanigans. We have a lot of individuals who are on student council, which are kind of our sub-characters or less main characters. I have to say, I really like when manga series put a character like sheet at the beginning. So not all manga series I find do that, but ones that do are very helpful. Particularly for me, I have to order a lot of my books from other libraries because if my library doesn't have it, I have to like place a request from somewhere else in the state that I live in to get it shipped in. And sometimes it takes a couple weeks, and then I'm like, oh, I remember that character, but I don't remember her name. So it's very helpful to have a sheet like this at the beginning. So shout out to manga series that include this. Very helpful. They also have a relationship diagram in case you are trying to remember how the characters feel about one another. We have our two main characters, and then we have the other individuals who are associated with either the student council or one of the main characters in some way, which include Yu Ishigami, who is one of my favorites, Chika Fujiwara, who is a little bit of a chaotic element, Hayasuka, who is a maid in the employment of the Shinomiya family, and Miko Ino, who is on the student council as well. So there's a lot of the usual shenanigans, but at the very last chapter, there's something happened that really clued me in that there's going to be a little bit of tone shift, or I'm guessing there's going to be a little bit of a tone shift going forward in this series, and I like the path that it took. I think that Shirogane is starting to wise up to the fact that things are not going to last forever in high school, and he has kind of made a very key decision. Even though I'm assuming that you're familiar with the series if you're watching this review, I don't want to give away the decision that Shirogane has made in this series, but he's made a decision that's going to have some impacts on his life, and I think things are going to happen and there's going to be a little bit of a tone shift that comes out of that decision that he has made. I think that's also realistic, the character that they chose to kind of have this wake-up call of sorts, or that I suspect is going to have a little bit more of a wake-up call in Shirogane. Shirogane comes from Well, I guess we should start by talking about Shinomiya, who comes from a very wealthy family. Her family leads one of these great business conglomerates. She has a personal maid who goes with her to school, although people at school don't know she's a maid or an assistant. I think she's technically a personal assistant to her. She is driven to school. She's not allowed to be photographed. She has all these rules and restrictions that come with being the daughter of a very, very, very wealthy family. Meanwhile, Shirogane, he's considered impure because he actually transferred into the academy. He hasn't been at this academy from the beginning of his schooling, so he transferred in and he has to work really, really hard. Mom has walked out of the family, so it's just him, his sister, and his dad trying to make the best of it. And while he is definitely intelligent, he earns top marks. I feel like has a little bit more of a realistic viewpoint on life than Shinomiya because of this more realistic life that he has had to live. And therefore, I think it makes sense that he's the one who's starting to come to these realizations quicker than Shinomiya. So I'm excited to see where the series goes. I really like the tone shift. I think it's going to be interesting. And I think the author has done a really good job of, at the beginning of the series, we were really just focused on the antics, the situations, the humorous things that came up when these two characters were interacting and the student council, but slowly through the last 10 volumes we've kind of fallen in love with these characters and we want to see them succeed. We want to see them confess their love to each other, and as a result I feel like this tone shift is going to go very well because I think we're invested in the character's success at this point in the series. If you have any thoughts on volume 11 of the series Love is War, please let me know. I would love to hear it. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching and I hope you have a great rest of your day.